Have you ever stopped to think that your morning cup of coffee might be quietly pushing your blood sugar higher than you realize? For most people, that idea sounds unlikely, even a little confusing, because coffee has always been seen as something harmless, something familiar, just a simple part of the morning routine that helps you wake up and feel more alert. It is not something people usually question, and that is exactly where the problem begins. Over the years, Dr. Michael Carter has worked with many patients dealing with prediabetes and type 2 diabetes, and what he noticed was both surprising and concerning. These were not people who ignored their health. In fact, many of them were trying to do the right thing. They were paying attention to their diet, reducing sugar, making small lifestyle changes, and following the advice they had been given. Yet, despite all of that effort, their blood sugar levels continued to rise slowly over time, often without any clear warning signs. What made this pattern even more alarming was how consistent it was. Again and again, it came back to something extremely simple, a daily habit that felt completely normal, something so ordinary that almost no one ever thought to question it, not because it looked dangerous, but because it looked completely harmless. And in many cases, that habit was directly connected to the way people were drinking their coffee every day. The truth is, coffee itself is not the real problem. You do not need to give it up, and you do not need complicated solutions or extreme diets to fix this. What actually makes the difference is a small shift, a simple change in timing and habit that can significantly affect how your body responds to sugar. The difficult part is that these effects do not happen all at once. They build gradually, quietly over time, which is why so many people do not realize what is happening until the situation becomes much harder to control. So, before you take your next sip tomorrow morning, it is important to understand what is really happening inside your body. Because once you see it clearly, you may never look at your daily cup of coffee the same way again. One of the most dangerous things about blood sugar problems is how quietly they develop. Many people assume that if something is wrong with their body, they will feel it immediately. They expect clear signs, strong symptoms, something obvious enough to force them to pay attention. But when it comes to prediabetes and type 2 diabetes, that is often not the case. So, in fact, millions of people are living with elevated blood sugar levels without even realizing it. They go through their daily routines as usual, feeling mostly fine, unaware that their body is already struggling to maintain balance. This is what makes the condition so deceptive. It does not always announce itself loudly. Instead, it builds slowly, almost silently, over time. Some people may notice small changes, but they are easy to ignore. Feeling more tired than usual, needing to drink more water, waking up at night to use the bathroom, or gaining weight without a clear reason. These signs often seem minor on their own, and many people simply attribute them to aging stress or a busy lifestyle. They do not immediately connect them to blood sugar. Dr. Michael Carter has seen this pattern countless times. Patients come in believing they are relatively healthy, only to discover through testing that their blood sugar levels are already higher than they should be. And what surprises them the most is not just the result, but how long it may have been happening without their awareness. The truth is, blood sugar imbalance is not something that appears overnight. It is the result of repeated patterns, daily habits that slowly push the body in the wrong direction. Each small spike, each moment of imbalance may not seem significant on its own, but over weeks, months, and years, those small moments begin to add up. That is why understanding your daily habits is so important. Not just what you eat, but how and when you consume certain things. Because even something that feels as routine as your morning coffee can play a role in this larger pattern. And if these patterns are not recognized early, they can gradually lead to more serious complications that are much harder to reverse. To understand why a simple daily habit can have such a strong impact on your blood sugar, it is important to first look at what is happening inside your body. Because the real issue does not start with what you see on the outside. It begins much deeper in the way your body processes and manages sugar every single day. At the center of this process is a small but very important organ called the pancreas. Its role is to produce insulin, a hormone that acts like a key. This key allows sugar from your bloodstream to enter your cells, where it can be used as energy. When everything is working properly, this system is smooth and efficient. You eat, your blood sugar rises slightly, insulin is released, and the sugar is moved into your cells without any problem. But over time, this system can begin to break down. Dr. Michael Carter often explains this using a simple idea. Imagine your pancreas as a factory that produces insulin. In the beginning, the factory works well. It keeps up with demand, producing just enough insulin to manage the sugar in your blood. But when your body is repeatedly exposed to spikes in blood sugar, day after day the factory is forced to work harder and harder. Eventually, two things can start to happen. First, your cells may become less responsive to insulin. This is known as insulin resistance. The key is still there, but the door does not open as easily as it should. As a result, more insulin is needed to do the same job. Second, the pancreas itself can begin to struggle. After working overtime for too long, it may not be able to keep up with demand. This means less insulin is produced right when your body needs it most. When these two problems combine, sugar begins to build up in the bloodstream instead of being used for energy. And this is when blood sugar levels start to rise. What makes this especially important is that these changes do not happen suddenly. They develop gradually, often without clear symptoms in the early stages. That is why daily habits matter so much, because even small repeated actions can either support this system or slowly push it toward imbalance. And this is exactly where something as simple as your coffee routine can begin to play a much bigger role than you might expect. At this point, many people start to wonder if coffee itself is the problem. After all, it is something they consume every day, sometimes more than once. But according to Dr. Michael Carter, the issue is not as simple as removing coffee from your routine. In fact, for most people, coffee is not the real cause of rising blood sugar. The real problem lies in how and when it is consumed. Coffee contains caffeine, a substance that directly affects your hormones, especially one called cortisol. Cortisol is often known as the stress hormone, but it also plays an important role in regulating your energy levels, especially in the morning. Naturally, your body produces higher levels of cortisol shortly after you wake up, helping you feel alert and ready to start the day. Now, here is where things begin to overlap. When you drink coffee immediately after waking up, especially on an empty stomach, you are adding an extra layer of stimulation on top of an already elevated cortisol level. This can send a stronger signal to your body to release glucose into the bloodstream, preparing you for action even if you are not physically active. In other words, your blood sugar can rise not because you ate something sugary, but because your body is reacting to a hormonal signal. For someone whose system is already sensitive or slightly imbalanced, this repeated pattern can become a problem over time. Day after day, the body is pushed into these small spikes, and although each one may seem insignificant, they begin to add up. Dr. Carter has seen this happen in many patients who believed they were making healthy choices. They avoided sweets, controlled their meals, and still could not understand why their blood sugar remained unstable. What they did not realize was that their morning coffee habit, especially when combined with an empty stomach, was quietly contributing to the issue. This does not mean you have to give up coffee completely. What it means is that timing and context matter more than most people think. A small shift in when you drink it and what you do before that first cup can change how your body responds in a very noticeable way. And this is exactly where a simple adjustment can begin to make a real difference. Now that you understand what is really happening inside your body and how your coffee habit might be affecting your blood sugar, the next question becomes very simple. What can you do about it? The good news is that the solution is not complicated. In fact, it is surprisingly simple, and that is what makes it so powerful. According to Dr. Michael Carter, the first and most important change is to avoid drinking coffee immediately after waking up, especially on an empty stomach. As mentioned earlier, your body already has naturally elevated cortisol levels in the morning. When you add caffeine on top of that, it can amplify the effect, leading to unnecessary spikes in blood sugar. Instead, giving your body a little time before that first cup can make a noticeable difference. Even waiting 30 to 60 minutes after waking up allows your natural hormone levels to stabilize before introducing caffeine. Another helpful adjustment is to eat something light before drinking coffee. This does not need to be a full meal. A small balanced snack with some protein or healthy fat can help reduce the impact on your blood sugar. It creates a more stable environment in your body, so when you do drink coffee, the response is less intense. Dr. Carter has seen patients experience meaningful improvements with just these small changes. People who once struggled with unstable blood sugar began to notice more consistent energy levels throughout the day. Some even reported fewer cravings and better overall control without needing drastic diets or major lifestyle overhauls. What makes this approach effective is not that it eliminates coffee, but that it works with your body instead of against it. It respects your natural rhythms and reduces unnecessary stress on your system. Of course, this is not a magic solution that fixes everything overnight, but when practiced consistently, these small adjustments can help support your body in a much more sustainable way. And sometimes it is these small, almost overlooked changes that create the biggest impact over time. By now, you can probably see that the issue was never really about coffee itself. It is about something much more subtle, something easy to overlook because it feels so normal, a daily habit repeated over time without ever being questioned, and yet capable of slowly influencing how your body functions. And in many ways, this is what makes it so important. From a personal perspective, what stands out most in this story is not just the science behind it, but how easily these small habits can shape our health without us even realizing it. Many people spend years searching for complex solutions, thinking they need to completely change their lifestyle, when in reality, a simple shift in awareness can sometimes be the first and most powerful step. Dr. Michael Carter has seen this pattern in many individuals, and it reminds us of something very important. Taking care of your health is not always about doing more, but about understanding better. When you begin to pay attention to how your body responds, even small adjustments can start to create meaningful changes over time. That being said, it is also important to understand that every body is different. What works for one person may not work the same way for someone else. The information shared here is meant to help you become more aware of your habits and how they might be affecting your body, but it should not replace professional medical advice or diagnosis. If you have concerns about your blood sugar or your overall health, it is always a good idea to speak with a qualified healthcare provider who can guide you based on your specific situation. For now, you can start with something simple. Tomorrow morning, before you reach for your first cup of coffee, take a moment to think about your timing, your routine, and how your body might respond. That small pause, that small change could be the beginning of something much bigger. Because in the end, real change often starts with awareness, and awareness begins with a single conscious decision.